Alrighty, we should be good to go with another preview presented by DC Brau. We'll give this stream a sec to catch up and see who's going to be joining us in chat today. I'm super excited. Lots of new news to discuss and super fresh coming off of a break. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. And I will open my sip of justice. Alrighty. Sadly, we didn't bring any of these on our trip to New York. I feel like our social team, most of whom are based in New York, I probably could have done that for them, and I didn't. So if you guys are hanging out in chat, I apologize. That's my fault. Alrighty. So what do we have going on? I pulled up, so we have the Countdown Cup coming up. Hey, Starry Palettes, Left Trigger Gaming. Hey, everyone. Thank you guys for hopping in chat. And I wanted to spend a lot of time just hanging out, like chatting today. So make sure that you guys are, shoot me some messages over here in chat, and we can answer questions and talk about what's coming up. So most recent thing, Countdown Cup. So we saw the marbles decided the fate of people's careers and lives today. Nothing to worry about there. Echo, Ash, Sigma, and Lucio getting the ban. I had a couple of tweets about who I thought this was going to impact. Some interesting implications with map pools as well, so we'll talk through that. I realized I was like trying to pull up the playoffs. Like the playoff information is amazing. Okay, they do have the brackets on here. I was gonna say, but like it feels super non-intuitive. So maybe we can go through this. Maybe we can make a graphic even to post to make this a little easier for people to understand. I did that last year and people liked that. But LAN playoffs, really, really exciting. So I'm excited about that. We have a couple charts that I pulled up here, so we can talk through those. We'll dig into Stats Lab and then kind of make some predictions for how we're going to do in the Countdown Cup. So thank you for joining me on the preview sponsored by DC Brau, and let's dive in. So looking at the out of rotation heroes, not too bad for the Justice, honestly. Like as they were going through, I think everyone had their like picks that they wanted taken out of the pool. I think a lot of Justice players were cheering for Symmetra to be taken out. Didn't happen, but like nothing. We built a pretty flexible team. Yeah, dash attack. I liked that Pharah stayed in. I don't think Pharah couldn't even be banned. I think Pharah was like 2% play rate. Or something crazy low. So Pharah is definitely in. So any Echo one tricks out there probably going to be okay. Pharah looked really good. If anyone didn't catch that, Chengdu was making that work. Even the Dragons made it work a little bit. So I'm hoping we see some Pharah. That's exciting gameplay. Tuba's Pharah is very, very strong. So is Assassin's though. So I like when we have that. Like when we have two players that kind of push each other, similar to how Closer and Tuba right now are really pushing each other on Brig, which we'll probably be seeing a lot of. That is my prediction. We have 1 day of scrims under our belt, and we have about 10 days until our match. So we'll see. But I think Brig is still very strong. Yeah, I'm sorry, Palettes. I'm really excited for this tournament as well. I think the bans shook things up more than last time. I think last time I kind of created an edge case where there was like one like that kind of like Neo Goats comp that everyone eventually ended up settling in on. This kind of like soft kills double shield, it soft kills rush with Lucio, so I'm really excited. But also the map pool is interesting, right? So we take Gibraltar out. I was actually talking with Avril earlier today. We take Gibraltar out of the map pool, like a very classic necessitates dive map. So we have Junkertown is also out, right? Yeah, so like a lot of those kind of longer sightline maps are out. So it's interesting. I think it's gonna be a really, really fun tournament. I'm really excited for it. And really big implications. So I brought up in my tweet today, I talked a little bit about who I think these bans are going to affect. And so I tried my best with the data here. So I mentioned that like you can look at it by minutes played, but the problem is if someone's like really good at a hero and you're just 3-0ing teams, anytime that you can play like Fury Sigma, right? So like Fury is a top 3 Sigma in the league. And so like maybe he doesn't have the highest amount of playtime because maybe the Justice, whenever he plays Sigma, are kind of stomping so quickly that he doesn't get a lot of playtime on the hero, and we're kind of 3-0ing instead of like going to 5 maps. So you could do it different ways. I ended up going with minutes, and I think this feels pretty accurate, right? Like if we had sat down and kind of lined up all of the players that play these heroes, these are like some of the people that stand out, right? Like Piggy's been like a Sigma warlord for a while. Same with Gargoyle. Hawk's been pretty solid, but Hawk has a very good diva as well. FD God obviously on the Lucio, Guangbung on Ashe. That's like been his bread and butter. He had like crazy high numbers there. And then like these are like the 3 echoes that stand out to me as well: Assassin, Yaki, and definitely Naga in the last tournament. Where can you see the map pool? So the map pool's on the website. So if you go to overwatchleague.com, the Countdown Cup details, scroll down past the out of rotation heroes, you got your map pool right there. So yes, some interesting ones. We'll see Rialto. I feel like I haven't seen Rialto in a minute. Blizzard World's back in there. Dimbani. A lot of these maps also really interesting. They have like a very different like especially the hybrid maps have like a very different playstyle on A versus the rest of the map. Like Blizzard World, Route 66, Havana, definitely a lot of these are going to be like you're going to have one comp, and that's what the flexibility comes in, right? Like players like Assassin, who I think are really, really flexible. It's nice to be able to have someone that can play the Sombra. I think that's what we did on Blizzard World in the first, I want to say it was the first tournament cycle. You know, you have Sombra, and then you can swap onto like the Ashe, or we wouldn't be able to swap onto the Ashe now, but you know what I mean, like that flexibility. Hey, good to see everyone. Thanks for keep hopping in chat, guys. I want to hear what you guys think about these too. So, yeah, so I think, you know, these are the teams that are going to have to make some adjustments just based on the total amount of play time. But I don't think like any comp got totally destroyed. And I think that like the biggest meme that I saw coming out of this was everyone saying that this, I think it didn't hurt any individual team, but it definitely hurt the West versus the East. I was watching the Kicked Tripod video with Avril and Yiska and Volumel, and they were talking about like there's like this theory of, you know, do the good teams dictate the meta, or does the meta dictate the good teams? And I think they were kind of settling in on the best teams are the ones that set the meta, which, you know, I think a lot of Western teams were very confident in the kind of rush type stuff that we were running here in NA, and you know, we went to the tournament and we didn't even get a spot in the grand finals with those comps. So we'll see. I think, you know, APAC's probably going to have a lot more comfort picks. I want to see if that Wrecking Ball. The other thing I was talking about today, where was that one? Yeah, I was really excited about this. So this is we can dig into the stats lab a little bit later. Hey Marmalade. But the win rate, so I mean, this is just filthy. So this is Backpack Matt has labeled this. I think initially he called it the Shanghai Death Comp, and then other teams started picking up, and so he called it like the Infinite Skill Cap composition. But I mean, when Shanghai runs it, it's just filthy. Can you still play Rush without Lucio? I don't really think so. I mean, we'll see. Right? Like teams, like I think if Dallas proved anything this season, like people were like, oh, can you do this without a Tracer? Can you do that without like this? And I think, you know, people can find ways to run things, but the lack of Lucio makes Rush maybe non-viable, borderline non-viable. Reinhardt is slow. He's a slow hero. It takes you can take a lot of poke trying to walk a Reinhardt and like a Mei Reaper comp in. So so we'll see. So this is, I mean, yeah, Shanghai head and shoulders. When you see these team fight win rate percentages, like most teams that are like competent on a comp are gonna be like in that 50%, just above 50% kind of range. So I was really happy. You know, we're hanging it, like Chengdu was running this at a really high level in the playoffs. The Huangzhou was running this at a high level. So I was really happy with that. You know, I'm optimistic. You guys know me. I'm optimistic, borderline copium on how I feel about the Justice. So I'm hoping we get a chance to run something like this against the APAC teams, because we haven't had a chance to kind of test our mettle with that region yet. So I think that would be really, really good. A BAP Brig meta? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see. It's early to tell. Like, you know, I don't think there's anything that kind of disqualifies the two from playing together. So possibly. it's really interesting. So as we kind of look at the matchups that are going to be coming up for the Countdown Cup, I really like what this does to some teams as far as kind of forcing players into interesting situations. So I think that like there's some kind of like borderline Sigma one tricks, borderline Lucio one tricks. I mean, honestly, just straight up Lucio one tricks that exist in the league that this might force them onto a Brig or might force them onto a Diva. And, we're going to have to see if these players can kind of hold their own on that. So that'll be good. That'll be good. And it's also, I mean, like these first couple, like I'm really excited to see what Dallas is going to do. I think they always come up with really interesting solutions to the meta. We'll talk a little bit in a second about the playoffs and the fact that this is a really big, both of our matches actually in the opening weekend, our match against Houston, which is really early, and then our match against the Gladiators, which is the last match of the weekend, both have really big playoff implications for all three teams involved. And I'm actually really interested to see how the meta changes from the first, like we're playing on the first day, and then we're going to be able to watch APAC play twice. We're going to be able to watch a lot of other teams play on the second day. And then like in that short amount of time, do we see a totally different version of the Justice between those 2 days? So that'll be interesting for us as well. Shani says London might get their first W this stage. Yeah, so the other tweet that I put out was looking at strength of schedule. So the way that I did strength of schedule was I just looked at what team is every team playing, and then you just score them based on their rank, their current rank in the league. So if you play Dallas, you get 1 point. If you play Vancouver, you get 13 points. And the idea is the lower the score, kind of like golf, the lower this, well, not really like golf, the opposite of golf. The lower the score, the more difficult it is, right? So if you play Dallas Fuel 4 times, that's 4 points. That's the lowest possible score. That's a rough schedule for you. So I mean, we looked at earlier, poor Florida, that not only are they having three heroes that are pretty comfort pick oriented, right? Like Slime, I wouldn't say Lucio one trick, but like Lucio is definitely his comfort pick. Gargoyle definitely on the Sigma comfort pick, and Yaki will be fine. But like Echo, I mean, he was good on Echo. So not only do they have some comfort picks banned, they're also one of the most difficult schedules coming into this Countdown Cup. So I think it's gonna be difficult for them. We're like right in the middle here, maybe even on the greener side of pastures in the middle. So I think our first weekend is going to be the one's going to really test us. That's Houston and Gladiators. And then the second weekend is Toronto and Vancouver. And to Shani's point, looking at strength of schedule, London has an easier schedule, might be their first win. We know someone's going to get their first win, right? So London and Vancouver, both of which have struggled this year, that could break some viewership records. That's going to be a big one to see, who scrapes out of this season with a win. And I mean, we'll see. I mean, like London plays, I think, Toronto earlier in the season or earlier in the Countdown Cup. Where am I looking? Yeah. So that's their first game. I think I made a tweet about this and I got some kickback on, that I think that the first weekend tends to have a lot more RNG because people haven't figured things out. So I think if this match was on the first weekend, London might even have a better chance of just kind of RNGing their way into a strong performance there. This one's going to be tough. Paris, we'll see. And then Vancouver. Are we finally going to get the breadsticks? We demand breadsticks. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if to this point, I mean, Vancouver, what was their strength of schedule? They're pretty tricky. I don't know if they're gonna. I mean, they make it easier every time, so I don't know if they're going to. I mean, they play us, so that's tough. Justice are a great team. They play Boston. They play Shock. That's tough. So I mean, it depends on if they change the criteria, but that would be exciting. Someone's gonna win. They just straight up change it to like if they win breadsticks. That would be fun. So that would be really good. Hadi and Mulfig. Yeah, I think Mulfig, when he swapped to Ball, had a very strong Ball, right? And so we'll see if some of these bans kind of allow some flexibility in the off tank rule as well, right? Like, who knows? Hey, Star Drummer, just reading through the chat here. Good to see you. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes for the Countdown Cup. The other big thing for the Countdown Cup that I keep forgetting, because I keep wanting to turn an eye towards the finals, is like there's still a Hawaii trip, right? There's still a Hawaii trip, and there's still, if we look at the season overview, and this is what I was talking about earlier for how big this first weekend is for us. And this is also, this kind of dovetails nicely into talking about the format for the playoffs. So they announced the way that the playoffs are going to be, in the West at least, is seeds 1, 2, and 3 go straight to the playoffs. So really big incentive to be one of the top 3 teams. Bottom 3 teams out entirely, and then 4 through 9 go into the play-ins. I really like that they added the opponent selection for 4 through 6. They announced that, right? Yeah, they did. Okay, good. Not a league stream. Yeah, so this is something that Avril and I actually, before the season even started, Avril and I talked about the fact that there's like a weird incentive sometimes to throw games for seeding. And that incentive would only go up, as the stakes go higher. So I think this was a really smart change for Blizzard to make. So, yeah, I mean, like we're obviously going to shoot to be in these top 3. Worst case scenario, we'd like to be in the upper half here, so we get some opponent selection going on. But yeah, I think that Dallas has really separated themselves. It's going to be, unless Dallas just implodes, I think they're going to be kind of uncatchable. But the real interesting thing here is these 5 teams that are separated by 1 point. And so I mean, this is, and in these 5 teams, we play Houston and Gladiators that first weekend, and so that's gonna be really important for us to really kind of come in, have a strong start. And then the other thing is the bonus wins that happen in Hawaii could be massive. I mean, two bonus wins takes you from 6th, borderline 7th, where you might not even be making an opponent selection. Like if Boston has I think Boston had a relatively easy, they have the easiest strength of schedule. The easiest schedule for Boston. So if you're looking at this, if Boston can bump up to the 6th spot, like it could be getting 2 wins could be the difference between 7th and 4th, or something like crazy like that. And so this is going to be high stakes. This whole season has been high stakes. Something that I haven't loved about this season is with only 16 games, it is mega stressful. Like every single game just feels like life or death. Like we win a game and we're achieving our purpose and we're the best team in the league, and we lose a game and we're not meeting expectations and we need a roster rebuild. So 16 games is tight, really, really tight. And I think that we're gonna feel that pinch going into the end of the season. And I guess I haven't really made up my mind on if I like that we're playing the first 2 weeks. I think we've been trending in the right direction as far as figuring out the meta faster. Second tournament, so first tournament, like everyone had like months to figure that out because it was the first tournament. Second tournament, we lost our first 2 games. Third tournament, we lost our first game. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. I think our coaches are getting a lot more agile. A lot of like the bigger things, like when you're trying to figure out a meta, you don't want to have to like waste time figuring out team synergy, because then it's like early on in the scrim process, right? You can think, oh, is this failing because it's a bad composition, or is this failing because we just don't have team synergy? So you get like bad information. It takes a lot longer. So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. So I'm not worried about us playing early. It's more like this gap week. Like, is there like a risk that there's like a shift in the meta that we don't get to try on stage that could then have implications in Hawaii? We'll see. It kind of cuts both ways. So we'll take what we're given and we'll do our best with it. Yeah, Shni. We'll see. I think, especially if things go into like that ball meta, like Mag has a good ball. Like we can, you guys saw that, like that statistically, we were one of the only Western teams that played it, and we were definitely one of the only Western teams that played it well. So if things move in that direction, I'm really excited. But optimistic either way. I think we've figured out a lot of things that are going to do good stuff for us. So yeah, I think that's the playoffs. That is kind of our Countdown Cup. What else were we going to talk about? We can talk a little bit about the meta, I guess. So the meta is pretty interesting. I think, chat was saying like the teams so this is like a very surface level analysis of the teams that are going to be most affected. But I think the reality is that you have to look at you really have to look at individual players and do they have like a plan B? So, or does the roster have a plan B, right? So the Shock, for example, have Violet and Twilight. And so I think that they're going to have a lot of things that they can run, even if FD God can't be kind of on his signature Lucio. So despite the fact that, they're losing someone with top playtime on the hero, they're probably still going to be, they are going to be fine. Assassin, he's plays a lot of Echo, but he's also, in my opinion, the best Sombra in the league. And so we knew that Sombra wasn't going to get banned, so I think he's going to be just fine. Same with Yaki. Yaki has a S tier tracer, so he's going to be fine too. Pray for Mayhem. Yeah, their strength of schedule. Yeah, we said their strength of schedule is like the second worst to Atlanta. So who does Mayhem play? They play. Well, they don't play the first weekend. That's a blessing at least. Or maybe it's not. Maybe they want the RNG. So they play Atlanta, who's obviously very hot right now. Boston, who we'll see. I think they feel like a meta-dependent team to me right now. Like sometimes they do okay, sometimes not. And then Houston and Gladiators. So they get that same Houston Gladiators weekend that we do. But then they also are playing Atlanta. So that is tricky. That's a tricky one. Let's see, what is Reed saying here? I think it's just beatable by Farah with Ash and Echo banned. 2 heroes of the ball. Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. I think that, people are really, really bullish on Farah comps right now. And you don't know, even though the heroes, that's a great point, Reed, that even though the heroes of a certain composition might not have been banned, you don't know how kind of the tertiary effects or the pile-on effects of a certain hero and a certain counter being banned. Your point's perfect. Maybe Farah actually just destroys ball comp, but the problem was it was so easy for teams to swap to an Ash, like a pocketed Ash or something to beat it that they just never did. But now that's not an option. Or great point, Reed. Very, very true. So it does not feel set in stone. Certainly not in the West. We'll see if the East also to me tends to be a region that changes a little bit slower. I guess that was true in the past. I think Shanghai has shown, especially in the playoffs, that they can actually adjust really quickly. But we'll see. My money would be on them kind of sticking with that composition, at least at the beginning, because it feels comfortable and safe, but we'll see. Yeah. It's also, I think Farah is also one of those heroes that's very map dependent, right? I talked with a couple people today about what tanks we think are going to be meta, and Orisa is going to be one of those picks I think we're going to see on Orisa maps, and we're going to see Farah on Farah maps, and it's going to see can they kind of break out of that bubble. So that's going to be really interesting. Let's see which matches are you guys most excited about, chat? I'm looking at some of these. So I think that our first 2 matches are going to be really hype, really big playoff implications. Also teams that in the regular season have been monsters. And also all 3 of us have not gone to Hawaii. So it's our turn, right? Dallas is just getting a timeshare out there. It's our turn. So I think this will be a really good way to see, Houston, Gladiators, Washington, of these teams. I hope that one of us is at least one of the teams that goes to Hawaii, and how quickly do these 3 teams figure things out. This is going to be another great one. Man, the Glads have a stacked weekend too. They're playing, Atlanta and us. I think that's going to be, and then this is going to be great. Dallas and San Francisco. That's going to be really good. That's what I'm saying, Schnee. Yeah. Will we see Pine this season? I don't know. That's a good question. It's visa dependent, right? It's also they're doing fine without him. Do you want to force someone culturally to fit into a team? And it's also even once he gets to the US, and I was someone was asking me are they going to play him in Hawaii because the ping will be normalized there. but like, he hasn't been scrimming with them, right? He hasn't been, or I assume he hasn't been scrimming with them on like healthy ping. Because even if it's like a West Coast team, I think that especially the heroes that he's playing, right, like the Widows and the McCrees, there's not a lot of forgiveness there for ping. So I think you can't just it's difficult to just plop someone in with no synergy and expect them to perform well. He does have the benefit of like I hear it's just as meta. He does Pine does have the benefit of, you know, if some patch goes through and, you know, going into the playoffs, and the league has a history of doing this, right? Like going into the playoffs, like really mixing things up. So, you know, maybe they give Widow a 400 health armor, 200 health armor, double the speed of her charge shot, and then all of a sudden Widow is so meta. And Widow's one of those things like you don't need as much synergy. Widow is kind of more one of those like click heads heroes, and I think that Pine is a good insurance policy if that happens. But I would be surprised if we see him. Hey, Army of Burbs. Maybe beat a few APAC teams while we're at it. Yeah, we were scrimming those APAC teams like preseason. Like we had our sole like open scrim that we really liked. So we would love that to play some of those APAC teams. Yeah, so Dark Phantom, that's another thing. I thank you for bringing that up. That's really interesting. So I think today, it was Wikipedia. Wikipedia, they are killing it. Like they have more accurate information than Blizzard does sometimes, most of the time. But yeah, so they're marking like, so Shanghai is a lock for the playoffs. I don't know if this is, yeah, this must be locked to qualify, because it's top 2 go in Asia. Then why is it 3 here? 3, then yeah. And like 4 plays 5, winner plays 3, and then winner of that advances, and it's 3 from the east. Yeah. So Valiant are out, cannot catch up. Decay versus Fleta. Decay versus Fleta would be sick. That would be a good highlight video. But to Dark Phantom's point, the interesting thing is no one is knocked out in the West yet. So like London or the Titans could go, this could just be their meta. They could go 4-0. They could go to Hawaii. They could get their 2 bonus wins. That would give them 6 points. And if everybody else ahead of them tanked super hard, they could sneak in. So no one has been eliminated in the West yet. So there's copium to pass around still for London and Vancouver fans. Yeah, I think we'll see. I think so Kaishak saying, you know, teams that have played APAC have an advantage because like they've played them before. But I think teams just look so different in different metas. I don't know how much. I think that like there's benefit to being in like the high pressure situation, to having to travel and then perform in like a setup that's not your own and under adverse conditions. But I don't know if like seeing the other team, because we all get to like watch the replays after. I don't know how much of like the feel. I guess there's some like some players have kind of come out of games. This actually happened recently when we played a team, and Tuba and I were talking, and he was saying that like, oh, like I watched this player POV, but playing against them on Brig like felt very different. And so yeah, I guess that's a fair point. I don't know how much of an impact that would have, but there's something to that. Who do I think wins Vancouver versus London? I think it's meta dependent. I think right now I would probably give it to London. I think like we're not sure where things are going, but I think like, yeah, like Hadi and Mulfig have had their moments. I would probably give it to London right now. Just guessing. And London, like what they took London took Shock to 5 maps, right? So like London, they've had some unlucky breaks. I think Vancouver has struggled to get their footing more than London has, so I would probably go with London. I want to see Fusion go insane and win something. I talk with some of the folks over with the Fusion, and we feel for each other because we both went 4-0 in the first stage. We both slipped up in the second stage. We both just missed Hawaii in the third stage. So I feel like there's like a bond of friendship between us and the Fusion. We're also in similar places, like overall kind of percentage wise in the kind of bubble of on the edge of play-ins. But if we kind of go on a tear, could kind of opt out of that. So there's a brotherhood. I mean, there's, you know, they're in Asia, but they are like our sister city. So, you know, there's a shared fate there. But will there be breadsticks? Yeah, just as that's what we were saying. That I kind of hope that they don't get breadsticks until the last game, and then they just throw it all out on the table, and they're just like win and breadsticks, and then it's like the most watched Overwatch League game of the entire season. Betting London, yeah, it's a safe bet, I think. I heard the Fusion copium is dank right now. Man, the Fusion, they just have such a stacked roster. It's just, I mean, like they got the Visa thing kind of got in their way. I don't know if I love the decision to move to APAC. You know, a lot of that wouldn't have been an issue, but that's, I mean, 99% of the time you don't know what's going on in the background. Like we've had our own share of visa issues as well, so you can't really fault anyone for that. But I think it was on like Reddit. Someone said like, "What a tragedy!" Like Funny Astro finally gets to go to Korea to play with his team, and they ban his signature hero. Tragic, absolutely tragic. Yeah, Carpe and Rascal is a very, very good DPS lineup. So we'll see. We will have to see if they can figure it out. So what do we think? What do we think meta-wise? I think Double Shield is kind of out. Rush is kind of out. Dive makes sense. The Wrecking Ball Death comp still makes sense. Show us the justice. What, like our little like a little page? You mean like this? Where's our played matches? This is Dive with Ana Brig. I feel like Diva is also like you have to play Diva, right? Like she had 70-80% play rate. Somehow, like I don't know if you guys watched the little like marble race, like Sigma's marble won, and the next 3 marbles were the Diva marbles. So it's like we got like the one timeline that Diva was not banned, and Diva just feels so strong, especially when Fury's playing it. I don't know if you guys watched our playoffs, but man, that was some of the best Diva gameplay I've ever seen. That was incredible. And yeah, I mean, like, yeah, Tracer Sombra, and that's the other crazy thing they were saying on the Marble broadcast. Tracer Sombra would have been the most played heroes that would have been most likely to have been banned had they not have been protected. That's okay, you know. I tweeted a while ago that like the second stage was like a justice nerf. We have like the best Tracer in the league, we have the best Sombra in the league, and we have the second best Zen in the league, and they banned them all. And then also, I mean, Mag's also playing Great Rhine, and I think he would have played Great Rhine. He's like needed a little bit of time to get his feet under him, you know, new to the league and whatnot. So I don't feel too bad. I don't think many teams. I mean, I guess the Mayhem are on the same level that we were kind of getting smacked down, but like we got the worst of it. We got like. I mean, Assassin Sombra is insanely good. Decay's Tracer is insanely good. Bebe Zen is so good. So, like, I don't know if many teams could say, like, oh, you know, we got hurt harder than the Justice did in that, what was that, the Summer Showdown? Or no, June Joust, right? So, yeah, Assassin's a really smart player. You wanted Winston to get banned? I don't know. I feel like the nice thing about Winston, or like the thing, I mean, if you didn't want to see Winston get played, there's a chance that it will not get played because Wrecking Ball is just better. And I kind of like him being in there because I think it creates more compositional varieties. I also don't like Rush, and I also don't like Double Shield. So this kind of ban set kind of worked for me. I was happy with this. Florida's not going to playoffs. It would be a steep road for Florida. So not only for Florida would they have to win. Oh, this is not what I want. What? Countdown Cup. So they would have to win against Atlanta, Boston, Houston, and or gladiators difficult. And even if you do that, you know, you have to get to... What am I doing? Wait, no, this is like the league overview. I don't want the league overview. I want the season 4 overview. There we go. Why doesn't NA... Okay, good. This is a really good question. So we're going to do why doesn't NA like ball next? Because I think I'm going to steal from Kick to Tripod, which if you guys want to go watch their YouTube video, I highly recommend it. I think they had a really intelligent discussion. Try not to look at Yiska, though. The man, I believe he must have lost a bet and had to put on face paint to look like a panda to get in the Chengdu zone, if you will. And that is nightmare fuel. So Florida, oof, they have to... win like at least 2 games, and then hope some of the teams right above them really fall apart, and then you're in play-ins, and then you're gonna get like one of these 4 teams most likely. Like Florida has to win at least 2 games in a difficult strength of schedule with some of their comfort heroes gone, and then they have to get picked by one of these 4 teams and beat them. Tall order for Florida fans. Not impossible. I mean, you guys, if anyone here is the... Hey, Nicole. If anyone here is a Justice fan, which I assume you all are, you guys saw what we did last year, so not impossible. So if there's copium for the Florida fans, it is... I was going to say it is to go back and watch the playoffs last year, but we did knock Florida out of the playoffs aggressively last year. So there's not a lot of hope to go around for Florida. Okay, so why doesn't NA like ball? So this is really interesting. So I think I'm just gonna straight up steal Kick Tripod's analysis, which is that there just aren't good ball players in the West, and whether that's a function of they don't like it or like on ladder it's just not popular, and so they just play other things. And so what happens is when we're trying to figure out the meta, the West teams will just scrim each other, and so if anyone plays ball and they're bad at ball, they'll just get destroyed. And so the kind of the group think kind of decides, oh, okay, every time a team plays Wrecking Ball, they get destroyed, and therefore Wrecking Ball is a bad pick and a bad hero. And so it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy, and then all of a sudden you go and you play APAC, and like, surprise, surprise, they came to a different conclusion because there are not as many good Rhine players in APAC, and so they probably had the opposite experience, where teams like the Dragons just started playing ball, having a ton of success with it, and they were like, oh, like Reinhardt's just a bad hero, that's just a bad comp. And without the opportunity to have the best of the Wrecking Ball players of APAC play the best of the Reinhardt players in the West, you just don't know, which is actually super exciting and like super cool for playoffs, and like really, really cool that you get like these different play styles that just kind of butt heads. And this was the most recent playoffs, right? But this happened in the previous one as well, right? Like basically every playoff, each region has brought like a slightly different answer to the same question to the table, and they just haven't really had the chance, based on the teams that exist in either region, to like test that hypothesis until they're on that stage. So I think that's really, really cool. I just got a DM that I'm talking too fast. I'm getting too excited. Great opportunity. PC Brau, sip of justice, to slow down a sec. Yeah, so Shani has it right. But yeah, so most main tanks here are going to want to play that Ryan Orisa. We'll see. I think I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, but something that does happen behind the scenes is that teams will ask other teams that they're scrimming to play certain compositions, especially in warm-ups, to try to get them ready for that. And so again, like, I mean, I keep going back to this, but you know, if I was a team that was going to go to APAC, wrong one. If I was a team that was going to APAC and I was scrimming in the West, I'd probably ask the Justice for a scrim, and I'd probably ask them to play this composition, because I think we are one of, and again, like we are one of the few teams that played it, like truly played it and didn't kind of like half play it. And so there's a very good chance that, you know, with 10 days of preparation, or for teams that aren't playing that first week, for 17 days of preparation, the main tanks in this league are good enough that that more than a couple of main tanks in the West are going to have phenomenal wrecking ball play. It's just going to happen. It's just that I think the majority of players and the majority of kind of like the sample size of that happening in scrims was poor enough that it just didn't get traction. Predictions for the top teams in each region. That's spicy. Do you want to do that? So Dallas is locked in. Dallas is going to be the 1 seed. They just are. I don't think they have a particularly... Yeah, their strength of schedule is right in the middle. They play a couple teams that are kind of just gimme wins. So they will be the 1 seed, and Shanghai will be the 1 seed. Then you kind of have... It's kind of like if we did like tiers, right? And so then you have like this chunk right here of teams that are separated by 1 point. So I think this is going to be... These teams are also all like playing well right now. I don't think that the meta drastically hurts any of them. And so I think these teams will probably end up in a amalgamation of these spots. Like it might be like I think Atlanta actually has a fairly difficult strength of schedule, but like hey, like it's a Justice stream, right? So let's be Justice fans. So let's say the Justice kind of come in hot first weekend. We beat Houston Gladiators, so we go up there. Maybe Piggy doesn't have as good a Diva as he does a Sigma, and he goes down here. Something like that. So I think this is kind of like the next tier, right? So you have like Dallas existing on their own. They are the 1 seed. This kind of group of 5 intermingling amongst themselves. And then what would the next clump be? And then you get these teams. And so these guys, like this actually, so this matters a lot. So if we look at the bracket for the West, this is the playoffs bracket, right? Not the play-ins bracket. Does Liquipedia have the play-ins bracket? Oh, of course they do. Oh, yeah, I spoke too soon. Yeah. So this is... So I think 4 and 5 get buys to here. And then it's 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's not right. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. So 5 and 4 get the buys to these rounds. And so 7 and 6 get to pick their opponents in the first round. So this is long story short. You want to be, if you're in that lower clump, you want to be the 7 or the 6 seed much more than you want to be the 8, 9, because you get an opponent selection before you get selected by the 4, 5. And so there's still, I think Atlanta's probably not going to get caught, but then I think like the drama is going to be between these 3 teams who are all currently tied in league points, and fairly close to map differential, fighting for this 7 spot where they're going to get the chance to pick to play one of the other 2 teams. So that actually matters a lot. So that's a cool narrative too. Great question. It's in the Justice Code of Conduct to pop off at the end of the season. True. We've done that now almost every season. Ooh, if the playoffs Justice happens this year to another team who are not the Justice, who would it be? Probably Paris, right? If I look at teams that have an upward trajectory as the season is going, oh yeah, it's definitely, they're definitely like the front runners. If you look at just this season, here, right, struggling, starting to figure it out, beating the best team in the league. beating a very good team. Yeah, so I think probably Paris. If there's a team that, you know, like with the right meta, because like you can't start from nothing, right? You can't. I don't think it's likely that like a team that has found no footing all season is going to all of a sudden click. But a team that has had sporadic success like Paris, I think with the right patch and heroes and balance and all of that could make a deep run. I think that's probably, and they have a big fan base. Do I think NA can beat APAC? Definitely. I think, you know, I think it's recency bias that right now everyone is saying APAC looks that much better. But if we go to like previous June Joust, which is the one where NA just slapped? Nope, not June Joust. Okay, so Dallas wins May Melee. So like one in the three, that means that like our best is better than their best, and our second best is better than their second best. That was May Melee. This was kind of a tie, right? Their best is better than our best, but our second best is better than their next best or whatever. And then, yeah, we just got smacked around here. Their second best is better than our best, right? So this is the most dominant. So yeah, I mean, like if you're just going by that, APAC is a stronger at the top of their thing. They are the stronger region. I think that Shanghai is just the best team in the league right now. It's anyone that doesn't think that is wrong. But we'll see. We'll see if there'll probably be a patch change, like we talked about earlier. Blizzard likes to do that pre-playoffs patch change, so there will probably be a patch change. There's going to be that opportunity. Something that the justice that we talked about, like in our post-game interview, right, is that we are a team that started the season trying to master like one competition at a time. Now that we found our footing, we're trying to like broaden that. So I think there are teams in NA that are getting better. So yeah, I don't think one region is like a lock for winning the finals just yet. I think NA can be, yeah, or more specifically, can someone in NA? Yeah, I mean, Washington can. Like, look at this roster. Look at this. Decay, I would take like 1v1 Decay versus Fleta. I would take Decay every day of the week. Not even a question. Mag versus Fate, easy Mag. Like, there's like I mean, I don't want to talk too much trash here. This is not the time for that. But if you line up our rosters next to each other, I feel very good about that matchup. So I think we could go toe to toe with the Dragons. Dallas has shown that they can go toe to toe with the Dragons. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see. I think the worst case scenario for NA is if with the current hero bans for the Countdown Cup, if the meta remains the Wrecking Ball composition. Because if you think about it, we just came out of the Summer Showdown where there were no hero bans, and that Wrecking Ball composition was considered like the best. It's ultimately like what won that championship. We then go into the Countdown Cup. If it remains the best, my hypothesis would be, barring some insane patch change, once you unban those heroes again, it will still be the best. Like it was the best a month ago, and nothing has essentially changed. And if that's the case, Shanghai would have then been practicing it for 3 months. Terrifying. So if you're an NA fan, I think you might be hoping that the Countdown Cup brings some change to the meta, not just for the Countdown Cup, but also to kind of show that there are viable and interesting comps. Maybe that Pharah counter that someone was talking about earlier that could be brought into the grand finals. At the end of the season, will we be trying to keep the season or the team the same? Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, or I've talked about this a lot, that I want to keep as much of this roster together as possible. I think it's an incredibly strong roster, but I also think that part of why I would say like the number one thing that we struggled with in the losses this year was synergy. Two of these at most two of these players were on the same team last year, right? Like Tuba and Decay played together for barely the end of last season. Mag and Assassin played together for like a very little bit on Runaway, just based on like who was on the roster at the time. Like Assassin wasn't getting a ton of play time. It was just like a kind of back and forth there, and then nobody else played together. Like Closer and Decay played together a little bit with the Fuel. And so it has been a lot of work for us to build that synergy, and so I don't want to do that again. So we would like to keep a lot of this roster together, but we'll see what Overwatch 2 like when that comes out, what those changes might look like. We'll see like next year what the season format's going to be. Is it going to be like so many games? Is it going to be like, are we going to go back to like the 40 game madness where we can say, you know what, we can swap in some players and build that synergy? Or if it's 16 games again, do we want to say, you know what, let's just lock in this roster and not have to waste 4 games or functionally a quarter of our season rebuilding that synergy? Yep, yeah. Like that's a good point, Dash Attack. There's some older synergies, but like I mean over time you kind of lose some of those. Yeah, like Closer and Fury played together. Like who else? There are some, I think Nicole, our social media guru, did like a really cool like blog post with like the historical connections between some of our players, and there are some other old ones. Like a lot of these guys played for Supreme. Jerry, Tuba, Bebe played for like Supreme on Team 7 way back in the day. And yeah, I think looking at synergy, a lot of the teams that at least started the season really strong, like I would put Florida in that bucket, because they went to Hawaii, you know, Dallas, obviously. A lot of teams that started the season strong did have pre-existing synergies, and so they didn't have to rebuild that. So I would like to be that team next year. I would like to be the team that can start very strong next year and not have to worry about that. Very cool. All right, what did we cover? We covered Countdown Cup. We're gonna the Justice are meta regardless of map. We're not worried about the hero bans. Our team is just too good. I haven't closed that one. We talked about the playoffs and the fact that the games that we should all be cheering the hardest for are going to be this first weekend where again, so I really like, I'm probably gonna do like a graphic on Twitter. Thank you for those that brought up the questions that kind of formed this opinion, because I think that it really is worth saying that like, what are the games that I should be paying attention to in the Countdown Cup? It's really any games between these teams, massive playoff implications, like big skin in the game, and any games between these teams really matter. So I would be paying very close attention to those. How are the coaches feeling? The coaches, Decay is built different. Does the Ash ban's a little bit interesting. I think it impacts APAC more. APAC really liked Ash, and I think like someone else mentioned that like Ash is one of the more flexible Pharah counters in the game. Like she can both counter, like with a Mercy Pocket, she can counter Pharah, but also be like a good tank buster with dynamite and stuff. So I think she doesn't impact things on a primary level, but in that like what does she make viable because she's not a reasonable or a option to swap to is pretty interesting. But to talk to Nicole's question, I think I didn't want to talk about it too much during the regular season, but our coaches set a lot of inter-season goals, and like I have a project management background, and you could kind of see like how there's like these little arcing goals. So like they had like a goal for a weekend, or they had a goal for a stage, and they had these goals for the whole season where it's like building synergy or understanding a meta or like understanding a hero. And there's like all of these like kind of bouncing arcs of knowledge and synergy that they've been trying to build all season. And without jinxing it, I feel like it is coming to a head at the right time, which is insanely difficult to do. And so I'm really, really proud of them. I think they get some mind-boggling hate. I think it was Deepay that said that, like, if you run the mirror and lose, like, people just say your players are worse, and if you run a different composition and lose, your coaches are worse. And like that kind of level of binary criticism is fairly true, and I think like our coaches have been on the receiving end of that, but I think they've done a great job. And so, you know, regardless of how this season goes, I will think that, but I also think that I don't have to have that qualifier in there. I think they've prepared the team to be in a good place. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yeah, Nicole, I was talking about Glads and Outlaws. That weekend's big. I kind of gave a little pep talk to the team today as we started getting into scrims, talking about like let's not skip a beat. You know, let's kind of treat this weekend as we might treat like the playoffs, where you know you can't have a bad weekend in the playoffs. You can't have a bad match in the playoffs. You can't have a bad match in the play-ins, because then you're done. So that's a good skill for our team to get a chance to practice developing as well. So yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. Thanks again to our sponsor, DC Brau, Sip of Justice, still going strong. No deep low lows for the Justice. So you know our beer intake, you gotta watch those low lows. We haven't made it to Hawaii, so like the celebrating beer hasn't been there either. So you know, moderate, you know, of age, responsible alcohol consumption for the Justice. But thank you again, as always, to DC Brau for sponsoring this content. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for the ideas in chat. I want to kind of talk through a little bit more. I'll do some follow-up on Twitter talking about some of the things that we talked about, so this is really fun. Yeah, we got this. Be sure to cheer for the team in our first games on the 30th. That's going to be, I mean, both of those games are going to be fantastic. Like, we're going to start with a bang. The Countdown Cup, I think, you know, Dallas and Paris, two teams that have shown that they are willing to go outside of the meta. So that's going to be really interesting. And then Houston ourselves, I think teams that have proven that we can play at a top level and take wins off of the best teams in the league. So I think a really, really good opener for the league. So thank you so much. Sorry, Pallets. Thank you so much, guys, for stopping by. Go Justice, and we'll see you guys in the next